So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Family Guys? So let's start the series. A failure of catastrophic proportions. Peter's question hung in the air, absurd and weightless. Can we keep him? Before Lois could formulate a response that balanced hospitality with the sheer insanity of the last 10 minutes, the distant sound of an explosion echoed through the quiet suburban air. Not a cartoon blammo with a puff of smoke shaped like a sheep, but a deep, percussive whoom that rattled the windows in their frames. A plume of black smoke, tinged with an unnatural, sickly purple, began to rise over the rooftops a few blocks away, in the direction of the Pawtucket Brewery. The Griffin family's reaction was a study in dissonance. Peter's eyes lit up. Cool. Something's finally happening on a Tuesday. Lois paled, her hand flying to her chest. That was close. Chris, get away from that window. Meg, call 911. Chris, from upstairs, yelled back, I can't. The phone just plays the MASH theme song. Stewie, however, had scurried to the front window, peering out with a tactical scrutiny utterly at odds with his diapers. The smoke coloration suggests a chemical combustion mixed with a foreign particulate. Not your standard brewery accident. Fascinating. Brian sauntered up beside him, a fresh martini somehow already in his paw. Or it's just quahog. Remember the time the sewer system mutated that rat into a kaiju because of improperly disposed gym socks? This is a Tuesday. Kakashi's visible eye narrowed. The jovial, vacant atmosphere of the street was now pierced by a very real, very familiar stench, panic, burning, and the ozone-tinged aftertaste of a violent chakra release. It was faint, distorted, but unmistakable. Naruto, he said, his voice losing all its lazy affectation. It was the voice of the copy ninja, commander of ANBU. You feel that? Naruto's grin had vanished. His blue eyes were sharp, scanning the horizon. The fox-like whisker marks on his cheeks seemed to darken. Yeah. It's weird. Like a tailed beast, but thinner. Angrier. And it tastes like cheap beer. It's a fragment, Kurama rumbled internally, his voice a bassline of unease. A shard of consciousness, maybe from one of the others, ripped loose and fused with the idiocy of this place. It's in pain. And it's lashing out. A tailed beast? Lois repeated, incredulous. What on earth are you talking about? That's the brewery. They must have had an accident with the vats. Lady, that's no accident, Naruto said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He'd heard that specific roar of primal rage too many times. He started pulling at the fingers of his orange glove, tightening it. Sensei, we gotta move. Agreed. Civilians should evacuate to a safe distance. Kakashi's gaze swept over the Griffins. Is there a town shelter? A designated safe zone? Peter puffed out his chest. Safe zone? Buddy, this is America. Our safe zone is right here, on this property, protected by the Second Amendment and my right to bear. Where's my tennis racket? Peter, for God's sake. Lois snapped. She turned to Kakashi, her maternal efficiency overriding her shock. The high school gym is the emergency shelter. It's about a mile east. But what is going on? A walking shark? A tailed beast? Is this some kind of terrorist attack? It's a dimensional incursion, Stewie piped up, sounding annoyingly pleased to be the one explaining. My device acted as a lightning rod, fusing our probabilistic frame with theirs. There. Chakra, as the garish one calls it, is a form of exotic particle that interacts violently with our universe's more flexible physical laws. The result is unstable, often dangerous, phenotypic expressions. Like, say, a giant, chakra-infused aquatic predator attacking a source of fermentable carbohydrates. He sighed. It's really quite obvious. Everyone stared at him. Stewie, honey, Lois began slowly, when did you learn words like phenotypic expressions? In utero, mother. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must fetch my neutrino defibrillator. It may prove useful. He waddled off towards the stairs. Another explosion, closer this time. The sound of screams, real and terrified, began to filter down Spooner Street. The idyllic suburban veneer was cracking. Kakashi made a decision. Naruto, with me. Reconnaissance and containment. Priority is civilian safety. He looked at Lois. Ma'am, get your family to that shelter. Now. Something in his tone, the absolute, unshakable authority, cut through the Griffin family chaos. Lois nodded, a spark of steel in her eyes. Peter, get the car. Chris, Meg, get your emergency bags. Now. As the Griffin household erupted into a different kind of chaos, Peter trying to remember where he left the car keys, Meg complaining that her emergency bag was just full of her diaries, Chris looking for his lucky hat, Naruto and Kakashi shared a glance. It was a look that spanned years of battles, a silent communication forged in life and death situations. Without another word, they moved. One moment they were on the front lawn, the next, they were a blur of motion, leaping onto the roof of the Griffin house in a single, gravity-defying bound. Lois, shooing her family out the door, caught the movement and gasped. They moved like nothing she'd ever seen, fluid, powerful, impossible. From the rooftop, the vista of Quahog spread before them, now marred by the rising pillar of ugly smoke. And there, amidst the streets of quaint colonial houses and strip malls, they could see it. It wasn't a perfect shark. It was a grotesque parody, as if drawn by a child who had only heard a shark described. It was roughly the size of a delivery truck, covered in mottled, gray-blue scales that shimmered with a pulsing, purple light. It walked on two thick, stubby legs that ended in cartoonish flippers. Its dorsal fin was serrated and cracked, leaking the same purple energy. Its eyes were blank, white orbs of pure chakra-fueled rage. It swung a massive, powerful tail, demolishing the brick sign for the Pawtucket Brewery with a casual sweep. From its maw, instead of rows of teeth, a chaotic beam of purple energy blasted, striking a storage silo and causing the secondary explosion they'd heard. "What is that?" Naruto muttered, a mix of disgust and pity in his voice. "A thought-given form," Kakashi said, his Sharingan now active and spinning, analyzing the chakra flow. "A fragment of consciousness, likely from one of the other tailed beasts, fused with this world's conceptual logic. It's in agony. It's lashing out at the nearest source of strong sensation, probably the fermentation sugars acting as a chakra catalyst. We gotta stop it. But, we can't just kill it. It's a piece of a tailed beast. It's a victim too." Kakashi nodded. Restraint and containment. A significant challenge in an urban environment with unknown variables. "We have no sealing teams, no barriers. We'll improvise." Naruto cracked his knuckles. "Just like old times." They shot forward, not running, but flickering, their bodies vanishing from the rooftop and reappearing on a telephone pole halfway down the street, then on the awning of a diner, closing the distance in a series of silent, high-speed jumps. Below them, Quahog citizens were reacting in a spectrum of typical manners. Some were fleeing, screaming. Some were standing on their lawns, recording with their phones. One man in a bathrobe was shaking his fist and yelling about his property values. Naruto and Kakashi landed on the roof of a convenience store overlooking the brewery parking lot, now a war zone of twisted metal and burning kegs. The shark beast let out a roar that was half biological screech, half distorted energy whine. It turned its blank white eyes toward a group of brewery employees trapped behind an overturned truck. "Hey! Over here, you big jerk!" Naruto yelled, cupping his hands around his mouth. The beast's head swiveled towards him. It opened its maw, the purple energy building again. Wind style, great breakthrough. Naruto didn't need hand signs for this one anymore. He simply exhaled, and a torrent of wind, visible as a distortion in the air, shot from his lips. It wasn't meant to damage, but to disrupt. It slammed into the beast's head, knocking its aim off and causing the purple beam to slag a section of asphalt instead of the civilians. The beast staggered, confused by an attack that carried force but not malice. "Its chakra network is a mess," Kakashi observed, his Sharingan tracing the erratic, sparking lines of energy within the creature. "No core, just a feedback loop of pain and this world's illogic. A Rasengan might disperse it, but it would be annihilation. Then we calm it down," Naruto said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. He leapt from the roof, landing lightly in the parking lot between the beast and the trapped civilians. He held up his hands, palms out. "Hey! I know you're hurting. I can feel it. My friend inside me, he knows that pain too." The shark beast paused, its head tilting. The purple energy in its maw sputtered. "You're speaking to a headache-given fins, knucklehead," Kurama grumbled, but there was less venom than usual. "It can't understand you. Maybe not with words. But with feeling." Naruto reached within himself, not for Kurama's destructive power, but for the vast, warm, sun-like presence of the fox's more gentle chakra, the chakra of connection he'd learned to use during the war. A soft, gold-orange aura began to emanate from him, not the violent cloak of the Nine Tails, but a gentle glow. The shark beast recoiled, as if the light was painful. It hissed, the sound like steam escaping. "It's a fragment of hatred," Kakashi called down, analyzing. "Your positive chakra is agitating it. It's a pollutant to its existence." Before Naruto could adjust his approach, a new variable entered the equation. Alright, you overgrown guppy. You picked the wrong town to start dry humping the economy. A beat-up station wagon screeched to a halt at the edge of the lot. Peter Griffin stumbled out, not with a tennis racket, but with a homemade potato cannon slung over his shoulder. He was wearing a football helmet and what appeared to be lacrosse pads. Peter? Lois screamed from the passenger seat. Get back in the car. Not while that thing is threatening my right to cheap, slightly skunky beer. Peter hefted the PVC pipe cannon. It was loaded with a spud that had Y2K carved into it. Eat spud, fish face. He fired. The potato shot out with surprising velocity, a glorious, dumb projectile of pure quahog. It sailed in a perfect arc and thwacked harmlessly against the beast's scaly side, then fell to the ground. The shark beast looked down at the potato. Then it looked at Peter. It seemed, for a moment, to process the sheer, magnificent irrelevance of the attack. Its blank white eyes somehow conveyed a profound sense of insult. This wasn't a noble wind attack or strange calming light. This was a potato. It forgot about Naruto. With a guttural roar of entirely new frustration, it turned and began to stomp towards Peter. Oh, Peter said, dropping the cannon. Hee, I think I made it mad. Lois, the, fund. Now would be good. Naruto saw his chance. The beast's focus was broken, its rage redirected to a simpler, dumber target. Its chakra flared in a predictable, attack-focused pattern. Kakashi-sensei, now. A non-lethal takedown. Already on it. Kakashi's hands were a blur of signs. Water style, water dragon jutsu. In a world of cartoon physics, the appearance of a massive, roaring dragon made of water from a man standing on a convenience store roof was perhaps not the weirdest thing to happen that day. But it was close. The dragon materialized from the moisture in the air, of which there was plenty near a brewery, and slammed into the shark beast, not to cut or pierce, but to envelop and immobilize. The water coiled around it, a crushing, swirling vortex. The beast thrashed, its purple chakra hissing as it interacted with the water, creating clouds of steam. Wind style, gale palm. Naruto added his own jutsu, not at the beast, but at the steam, shaping it, compressing it around the creature's head, cutting off its senses and further disorienting it. The combined assault was too much for the unstable fragment. The purple chakra flickered wildly. The beast's form began to dissolve, not in an explosion, but in an unraveling. The scales turned to smoke, the legs dissipated, the blank eyes faded. The roaring energy condensed into a small, pulsing, purple marble of dense hatred and confusion, about the size of a billiard ball, which fell with a clink onto the wet asphalt, rolling in a small circle before coming to a stop. The parking lot fell silent, save for the crackle of the remaining fires and the hiss of steaming pavement. Peter broke the silence. Hee. Cool water show. You guys work for Cirque du Soleil? Naruto ignored him, walking cautiously towards the purple marble. He could feel its bitterness, its ache. He knelt down, his own golden chakra still faintly glowing from his hands. What are you doing? Kakashi asked, landing silently beside him. It's still there. The feeling. We can't just leave it like this. Naruto reached out, not with his physical hand, but with his chakra, a technique of empathy he'd learned from his mother's lineage. He touched the core of the fragment's pain. Images, jagged and sharp, flooded his senses. The terror of being ripped apart. The confusion of this loud, flat, nonsensical world. The overwhelming smell of yeast and hops. The profound loneliness. I see you, Naruto whispered, his voice thick. It's okay. The pain will fade. You can rest now. The purple marble pulsed once, weakly. Then, under the gentle pressure of Naruto's understanding chakra, it dissolved not into nothing, but into a faint, shimmering mist that rose and dissipated in the afternoon sun. The last echo of its rage was a sigh. Naruto slumped, a tired sadness in his eyes. It's gone. Kakashi put a hand on his shoulder. You did well. It was a mercy. The sound of approaching sirens finally filled the air. Police cars, fire trucks, and curiously, a news van from Quahog 5 News screeched into the lot. A reporter with perfectly coiffed hair was already speaking into a camera, gesturing wildly at the destruction. Lois ran over, grabbing Peter by the arm. You incredible idiot. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. Because the circus ninjas had my back. Peter said, throwing an arm around a startled Naruto. This is my new best friend, Naruto. He's from a hidden leaf. It's a composting thing. As the authorities descended and the Griffins were swept up in a whirlwind of questions and chaos, Kakashi pulled Naruto aside, towards the shadow of the ruined brewery wall. "This changes the situation," Kakashi said quietly, his eyes scanning the gathering crowd. "The breach is two-way. Fragments of our world are coming here, mutating. But also, our presence is noticed." He nodded towards the news camera, which was now panning over to them. "We have no infrastructure here. No support. And we are now responsible for containing the collateral damage of a reality merger." Naruto looked back at the Griffin family. Peter was trying to demonstrate his potato cannon technique to a bemused firefighter. Lois was apologizing to the brewery owner. Meg was trying to disappear. Chris was picking up a piece of weird scale. Stewie was off to the side, attempting to scrape residual purple chakra residue into a test tube. Brian was explaining postmodernism to a confused police officer. They were chaotic. They were clueless. They were, in many ways, a mess. But they were also, suddenly, under his protection. A fierce determination solidified in Naruto's gut, burning away the confusion and sadness. "Then we build infrastructure. We protect them. That's what a Hokage does, sensei. No matter what village he's in." He managed a small, real grin. "Besides, it's not like it's boring." Kakashi's eye crinkled. "No. It certainly is not." He glanced up at the sky, where the last of the strange dimensional shadow seemed to linger. "We need information. We need to understand the rules of this world. And we need to find out if anyone else, less merciful than us, came through." From his perch on the news van, Stewie Griffin watched the two ninja, his tiny brow furrowed in thought. A dimensional breach. Energy-based life forms. Combat techniques that defied conventional physics. This wasn't a disaster. It was an opportunity. He looked at the test tube in his hand, where the faintest spark of purple energy fizzed. A smile, far too cunning for a baby, spread across his face. "Oh, this," Stewie murmured to himself, "is going to be infinitely more entertaining than world domination." Chapter 2, The House on Spooner Street. The fallout from the Pawtucket Plisner Shark incident, as the Quahog 5 News banner now declared it, was a bureaucratic and media whirlwind that made Naruto long for the straightforward post-mission debriefs of the Hokage's office. There, at least, the questions were about enemy numbers and tactical outcomes, not about his fashion choices or his illegal use of municipal water without a permit. They were temporarily sequestered in the Griffin living room, a space that felt like a museum of aggressive normalcy. A floral sofa, a recliner that smelled faintly of cheese, a TV the size of a small wall. Kakashi stood by the fireplace, appearing to examine a family photo but actually monitoring the two police officers and the man from the Federal Anomaly Response Bureau, FARB, who kept mispronouncing his own agency's acronym. "So, Mr. Hokage," said Officer Swanson, a man whose mustache seemed to be doing most of the talking. "You expect us to believe that you're a ninja from a hidden village in another dimension, and you used wind style and water style to stop a monster that was, and I quote my son here, probably just a mutated bar promo." He gestured to Chris, who was nodding earnestly. "It's true," Naruto insisted, leaning forward on the couch. "And it wasn't a monster, not really. It was a piece of a tailed beast, which is a giant creature of chakra, and it was in pain because your universe's floppiness was hurting it." Officer Swanson blinked slowly. Floppiness. Peter, who had appointed himself Naruto's cultural ambassador, clapped a heavy hand on Naruto's shoulder. "What the kid's trying to say is, it's a zoning issue. That brewery's always been a nexus for weird energy. Remember the time the beer made everyone's voices high-pitched? Same principle." The FARB agent, a man with a name tag that read Jenkins, and a vacant expression, scribbled on a notepad. "Subject exhibits persistent delusions of grandeur, possibly schizotypal. Recommends observation, not incarceration. Also notes strong body odor of ramen." Kakashi finally turned, his visible eye curving into a smile that didn't reach the rest of his face. "Officers, while the specifics may be challenging, the result is undeniable. The threat was neutralized with minimal civilian casualties. Wouldn't the prudent course be to focus on infrastructure repair and public reassurance, rather than the metaphysical origins of the responders?" His tone was calm, reasonable, and carried an undercurrent of steel that even the Quahog PD couldn't ignore. Swanson grumbled, snapping his notepad shut. "Fine. But you two are to remain with the Griffins as material witnesses. Don't leave town. And for God's sake, if you're gonna do more of that water magic, file an environmental impact statement first." He pointed a finger at Peter. "And you. No more potato artillery. You can't regulate produce-based defense." Peter called after them as they left. It's a farmer's market issue. As the door closed, the tension in the room shifted from official to domestic. Lois let out a long, weary sigh, the kind that seemed to carry the weight of 20 years of Peter's decisions. She looked at Naruto and Kakashi, who stood in her living room like two exotic, dangerous birds that had crashed through her picture window. "All right," she said, her hands on her hips. "You saved people today. That counts for a lot in my book. But you also blew up part of the town's largest employer and introduced my family to concepts that are giving me a migraine. So, ground rules." Naruto sat up straight, listening with the attentive respect he'd give to Tsunade or Irika. Rule 1, no ninjutsu in the house. The insurance doesn't cover active shinobi. Rule 2, you help with chores. Your dimensions might be collapsed, but my floors still need mopping. Rule 3, you try to explain what's going on, in small words, to me. I need to know what kind of danger my family is in. And Rule 4, she said, her gaze softening just a fraction. You're clearly far from home and in over your heads. So for now, you have a roof here. The couch pulls out. We'll figure out the rest. Naruto felt a lump in his throat. This woman, in her sensible sweater, was offering sanctuary with a stern kindness that reminded him painfully of Irika-sensei. Thank you, Lois-san. We won't be a burden. Believe it. Yeah, thanks, Mom Lois. Peter added, throwing an arm around Naruto again. This is great. It's like having exchange students, but with cool murder skills. Hey, can you teach me that thing where you make a copy of yourself? I could send a clone to work and the real me could go to the drunken clam. That's not how it, Naruto began, but was cut off. A fascinating proposition, Stewie said, waddling into the center of the room. He had changed into a tiny smoking jacket. But before we delve into the pedantic distribution of household labor or Peter's pursuit of perfect sloth, we must address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the unstable multiversal rift currently festering in our spacetime. Brian followed, a new martini in paw. He means, what's the plan? You guys can't just couch surf until the next monster shows up. Kakashi nodded. A fair question. Our immediate objectives are threefold. First, analysis. We must understand how chakra interacts with this reality's laws. The shark was evidence of a dangerous synergy. Second, reconnaissance. We need to map the points of instability, the places where the walls between our worlds are thin. Third, defense. We must assume more incursions are likely, and that not all will be mindless fragments. You think people came through too? Meg asked quietly from the stairs, where she lingered like a ghost. It is a certainty, Kakashi said. The energy released was immense. If Naruto and I were drawn to the epicenter, this house, others may have been scattered to other points of convergence across this. Quahog. A heavy silence fell. The reality of their situation settled onto the floral sofa, the cheese-scented recliner. Great, Chris said, breaking the silence. So we've got ninja monsters and, like, evil ninjas maybe running around? Do they have cool costumes too? Some do, Naruto said, a shadow passing over his face. He thought of the Akatsuki, their cold eyes and overwhelming power. What would a being like Pain or Obito do in a place like this? A place with no concept of true suffering, no ninja to oppose them? The thought chilled him more than any jutsu. Then analysis is the first priority, Stewie declared, clapping his hands together. And I, as the inadvertent architect of this confluence, am the obvious choice to lead it. I propose a partnership. You provide the raw data, the chakra, the techniques, the physiological particulars. I provide the quintessential Quahojin mind, adept at navigating and exploiting absurdity. Together, we may devise a means to either stabilize the merge or facilitate a controlled separation. Naruto looked at Kakashi. The Jonin gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Stewie was an unknown variable, a baby with the mind of a megalomaniacal scientist. But he was also their only local expert on the flexible physical laws that had caused the problem. All right, Naruto said, extending a hand to Stewie. Partners. Stewie looked at the hand with distaste, then reached up and shook Naruto's finger. A historic accord. Now, first, I'll need tissue samples. The next few days established a bizarre new routine at 31 Spooner Street. Naruto threw himself into chores with the same explosive energy he used for everything. He discovered that the shadow clone jutsu was, as predicted, a revolutionary household tool. Soon, 6 Narutos were mowing the lawn, doing laundry, washing dishes, and cooking with a chaotic efficiency that left Lois simultaneously grateful and terrified. The clones argued with each other over the best way to fold a fitted sheet, culminating in a brief, harmless scuffle that ended with 3 of them popping in a puff of smoke, leaving the remaining 3 to triumphantly declare victory. Peter was in heaven. You see that, Lois? I finally got the workforce I deserve. It's like a sweatshop, but for my personal comfort. He attempted to order a clone to fetch him a beer, only for the clone to hand him a glass of water with a stern, believe it. Hydration is important for a productive day, Databayo. Kakashi, meanwhile, assumed the role of silent observer and strategist. He spent hours walking the neighborhood, his Sharingan recording everything, not just potential chakra signatures, but the social patterns, the technology, the bizarre local customs. He saw a man have a 5-minute conversation with a rubber chicken. He saw a chicken have a 5-minute conversation with a man in a suit. He saw a mailman get hit by a car, only to stand up, dust himself off, and continue his route. The world operated on a logic of punchlines and reset buttons, a profound indifference to consequence that was, in its own way, more alien than any foreign ninja village. His first report to Naruto, delivered on the roof as they watched the sunset paint Quahog in orange hues that were almost familiar, was grim. The instability isn't uniform, Kakashi said, his voice low. It's concentrated in places of strong emotional resonance or narrative weight. The brewery, the high school, the drunken clam tavern, that strange round house where the man with the glasses lives. Emotional resonance? In our world, certain places become saturated with chakra from events, battles, rituals, great suffering or joy. Here, it seems to be saturated with joke potential. The places where the most predictable yet outlandish things happen. The dimensional walls are thinnest there. I felt echoes. Whispers of our world. And not just from beasts. Naruto's jaw tightened. People. Possibly. But there's another problem. Kakashi's I met his. Our chakra doesn't recharge here normally. The natural energy is thin. Sugary. It's like trying to breathe in a room full of helium. We can use what we have stored, but replenishing it is slow and inefficient. We are on a finite clock, Naruto. The implications were dire. No unlimited clone spam. No endless Rasengan barrages. They would have to be conservative, strategic, words not always in Naruto's vocabulary. Downstairs, Stewie's analysis was underway in the garage, which he had commandeered as a lab. He had Naruto perform simple jutsu, a tiny fireball, a small gust of wind, a puff of smoke, while hooked up to a series of modified kitchen appliances that beeped and whirred. Fascinating, Stewie muttered, watching a graph on a stolen laptop screen. The energy clearly obeys your will, but it also appears to be interpreting it. When you attempted the fireball, my spectrometer detected not just increased thermal output, but a brief spike in comedic irony particles. It's as if the universe itself is trying to undercut the seriousness of your endeavor. What does that mean? Naruto asked, watching a tendril of his own fire curl into the shape of a smiley face before dissipating. It means your power is being quahagified, Brian said from the doorway, where he was observing with a writer's detached curiosity. Nothing here is allowed to be purely epic. There's always a pull towards the ridiculous. It's the town's gravity. Stewie nodded. Precisely. Your chakra is a foreign antigen, and reality is producing absurdist antibodies. This could be a vulnerability, or a weapon. A dark gleam entered his eye. Imagine if we could weaponize the anti-seriousness. Point a beam of pure, concentrated wacky at your enemies. The psychological damage alone. Naruto frowned. We're not weaponizing wacky. We're trying to protect people. Protection, schmotection, Stewie waved a dismissive hand. The principle is sound. The fragile domestic equilibrium was shattered on the fourth evening. Lois had made meatloaf, a quahog staple that Naruto attacked with a gusto that both impressed and horrified the family, when the TV news cut to a special report. Continuing mystery of the phantom jokester plaguing downtown, the anchor said. Witnesses describe a figure in a swirling, black and red cloud, appearing out of nowhere, performing elaborate and strangely poignant practical jokes before vanishing. Earlier today, he replaced the water in the mayor's fountain with what appears to be perfectly clear, mildly carbonated lemonade. The screen showed security footage. The image was grainy, but Naruto and Kakashi both shot to their feet, food forgotten. The figure was tall, wearing a familiar, black cloak with red clouds. The face was obscured, but the style, the aura of casual, terrifying power, was unmistakable. Akatsuki, Naruto breathed, his knuckles white on the table. Not just any, Kakashi said, his Sharingan spinning involuntarily. The way he moves, the flair for the dramatic, the focus on the message. On screen, the figure turned slightly towards the camera. For a fraction of a second, the footage cleared, revealing a shock of orange hair and a single, visible eye that seemed to stare right through the screen. Then he was gone in a swirl of paper thin, fluttering. Were those leaflets? That's not a standard transportation jutsu, Kakashi murmured. It is pain, Naruto said, his voice hollow with dread. But, different. The lemonade, that's not his style. His pain was real. This is, a joke. Or a new kind of pain, Kakashi said grimly. One tailored for a world that doesn't understand suffering. He's probing. Testing the rules. Peter squinted at the screen. Hey, that guy's got a cool cloak. Do you think he sells those? I'd look good in a cloud pattern. Hee, cloudy with a chance of Peter. Lois looked from the frozen image on the TV to the ashen faces of her two house guests. The last of her skepticism evaporated, replaced by a cold, maternal fear. That's one of the people you were worried about, isn't it? Naruto nodded, unable to tear his eyes away from the screen. The figure's lone, visible eye seemed to hold a question, a challenge, and an infinite, distorted sadness. Yeah, Naruto said, the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. That's one of them. And if he's here, and he's adapting, then this isn't just about weird monsters anymore. He turned from the TV, his expression shifting from shock to a blazing, determined focus. The goofy, helpful houseguest was gone. In his place stood the soldier who had faced down an army, the Jinchuriki who had borne the world's hatred, the future Hokage. Stewie, Naruto said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. Forget the tissue samples. We need to know everything about downtown Quahog. Its layout, its sewer systems, its power grid. And we need to find out what mildly carbonated lemonade means to a guy like that. He looked at Kakashi, and an unspoken understanding passed between them. The reconnaissance phase was over. The war for the soul of two realities, fought on a battlefield of absurdity and heart, had just found its first general. And he was currently stealing the last piece of meatloaf when no one was looking. Chapter 3, The Path of Painting Laughs. The air in the Griffin garage turned lab was thick with the scent of ozone, burnt ramen packets, a side effect of Naruto's chakra exertion, and Stewie's expensive baby powder. Scrolls from Kakashi's pouch were spread next to schematics of Quahog's sewer system, stolen from City Hall by a shadow clone Naruto had codenamed Operation Boring Paperwork. The pattern is not random, Kakashi stated, his finger tracing a map of downtown dotted with red pins. Each pin marked a phantom jokester incident. He's avoiding places of pure commerce or residential areas. He targets civic symbols, the mayor's fountain, the police station's coffee supply, the historical society's oldest bench in Rhode Island exhibit, which he replaced with a much more comfortable Barkalungar. And the lemonade? Lois asked, handing mugs of coffee to the adults. She'd become a silent, anxious participant in their war council. A statement, Naruto said, staring at a photo of the cloudy, carbonated liquid. He'd been uncharacteristically quiet since the news report. Back home, pain, his whole thing was about understanding pain. He'd make people suffer to make a point. It's not painful. It's inconvenient. It's confusing. It's like he's trying to teach a lesson this world is too dumb to get. Or he's lost his script, Kurama mused internally. The rules changed. The man who believed himself a god is now a stranger in a land where a dog drinks gin and a baby builds death rays. His grand narrative of pain has no audience here. So he's ad-libbing. And it's making him unstable. Precisely. Stewie chimed in, tapping his own laptop. My analysis of the residual energy at the fountain site shows a chakra signature of immense power, but it's fractured. Leaking. There are 6 distinct energy profiles, but they're blurring together, like radio stations overlapping. And they're all saturated with what I'm calling narrative decay particles. He's literally coming apart at the seams because the story he's in makes no sense. Brian, lounging on an old dog bed Stewie had grudgingly provided, took a sip of his martini. So we've got a psychologically shattered, reality-warped ninja messiah with a god complex and a newfound penchant for prop comedy. Great. My memoir just wrote itself. Title, and then the lemonade god attacked. We cannot treat him as the pain we knew, Kakashi said, his tone clinical. His Rinnegan abilities will be distorted by this reality. His Shinra Tensei might repel not just matter, but logic. His Chibaku Tensei could create a ball of, I don't know, slapstick. We have no idea. Engaging him directly is a last resort. Then what's the first resort? Meg asked from the doorway. She'd been lingering more often, her usual aura of depressive gloom replaced by a nervous curiosity. Naruto stood up, his chair scraping. We talked to him. A stunned silence filled the garage. Talk? Peter boomed. To the lemonade guy? Naruto, he doesn't want to talk. He wants to mildly carbonate things. That's the action of a madman. Peter, be quiet, Lois said softly, her eyes on Naruto. Why do you think you can talk to him, Naruto? The news said he vanishes before anyone can get close. Because I've done it before, Naruto said, his blue eyes burning with a conviction that felt out of place amidst the oil stains and old tools. I talked him down. I made him see there was another way. It cost a lot. But I did it. His pain was real. Maybe underneath whatever this place is doing to him, it still is. Kakashi watched his student. He saw not the naive boy of years past, but the young man who had borne the weight of forgiveness and broken a cycle of hatred. A strategy formed, cold and pragmatic. A parley is a high-risk intelligence-gathering operation. We learn his state, his motives, his capabilities. But we do it on prepared ground. With contingencies. Contingencies? Stewie's eyes lit up. You mean traps? Counter-absurdity measures? I've been workshopping a device that emits a localized field of crushing normalcy. I call it the suburban dampener. It could temporarily glue his reality-warping powers to the mundane. We are not testing untested science on an S-rank threat, Kakashi said flatly. The contingency is withdrawal. We observe, we attempt dialogue, we disengage at the first sign of hostile transformation. Our primary goal is to confirm his identity and intent. The plan was set. They would use the pattern. The next civic symbol on the list was the Quahog Public Library's prized possession, a first edition of Moby Dick rumored to have been sneezed on by John H. Hancock. If Payne, or whatever he was now, was making a statement, he'd make it there. The following afternoon found them in the musty silence of the library's special collections room. It was a perfect trap, and not one of their making. Tall, narrow windows cast long shadows across polished wood floors. The air smelled of dust and existential dread. Peter, who had insisted on coming, I have a library card. It's only ever been used to scrape ice off my windshield, was already snoring softly in an overstuffed chair. Naruto, Kakashi, and Stewie, hidden in a large baby carrier on Kakashi's back, disguised as a hiking pack, waited. Lois, Meg, and Chris were at a safe distance, manning a radio. Brian had claimed the role of dramatic narrator and was observing from the fiction aisle. He's late, Stewie whispered via a walkie-talkie wired into the carrier. Perhaps he got lost. Or he's stuck in a cutaway gag. Quiet, Kakashi murmured, his Sharingan active and concealed behind a normal-looking eye patch he'd bought at a pharmacy. He was monitoring the chakra in the room. It was thin, quiet. Too quiet. Naruto stood in the center of the room, hands at his sides, not in a fighting stance, but open. Vulnerable. He wore his orange jacket, his forehead protector gleaming in a sliver of sunlight. He was a beacon. He'll come, Naruto whispered, more to himself than anyone. And he did. There was no puff of smoke, no swirl of leaves. One moment, the space before the display case holding Moby Dick was empty. The next, it simply wasn't. It was like a hole in the world had been punched and then filled with a presence. The air grew heavy, not with malice, but with a profound, distorted sorrow. He stood there. The black cloak with red clouds. The orange hair. The piercing, violet eyes of the Rinnegan, but in only one socket. The other eye was squeezed shut, as if in a permanent wince. His skin was pale, and fine cracks, like old porcelain, webbed from his closed eye. In his hands, he didn't hold a tool of torture or a scripture. He held a whoopee cushion and a spray bottle labeled Permanent Press. This was pain. And it wasn't. Naruto Uzumaki, the figure said. His voice was the same, layered with the echoes of the six paths, but now there was a tremor underneath, a note of static. You persist. Even here, in this cacophony of meaninglessness. Nagato, Naruto said, the name feeling both foreign and intimate on his tongue in this place. Or, are you Yahiko? Who am I talking to? A spasm crossed the figure's face. The open Rinnegan eye twitched. The distinctions blur. The pain was clear. The path was singular. Here, the pain is a punchline. The path is a maze with no center. He looked at the whoopee cushion in his hand as if seeing it for the first time. I replaced a tyrant's throne with a whoopee cushion in the dimension I came from. It was a profound critique of the fragility of power. Here, a man simply sat on it, made a noise, laughed, and ordered a beer. The lesson died unborn. This world is different, Naruto said, taking a slow step forward. Their pain is different. It's not less, it's just quieter. It gets drowned out by the noise. Noise. The figure's voice boomed, yet the glass cases didn't rattle. Instead, the books on a nearby shelf momentarily rearranged themselves into the shape of a frowny face. It is all noise. A ceaseless, shrieking void of context. I sought to bring the great pain, the shared understanding that would birth peace. But how can one share an understanding when no one is ever serious? He was unraveling before them. Kakashi's Sharingan saw it, the 6 chakra paths within him, once a precise, terrible machine, were now tangling, their purposes cross-wired. The Deva path's gravity power was leaking, causing the dust motes in the air to swirl in lazy, nonsensical patterns. You don't have to do this here, Naruto pleaded, his voice earnest. The cycle can be broken. I proved it to you. We don't have to keep hurting people to make them understand. What do they understand? Pain roared, and this time, his power flared. Not a Shinra Tensei, but a wave of distorted force that hit Naruto. It didn't blast him through a wall. It changed his clothes. 1 second, Naruto was in his orange jacket and pants. The next, he was wearing a frilly, pink apron with "Kiss the Cook" on it and a chef's hat. Naruto stared down at himself, stunned. Peter, waking from his nap, blinked. Hey, new outfit. Hee, it's less orange. You see? Pain whispered, the anger bleeding into a desperate confusion. He gestured with the spray bottle. The very fabric of cause and effect is a sitcom. I tried to use the King of Hell to restore life to a fallen songbird. It instead gave it the voice of a lounge singer and a gambling addiction. My power is being mocked. This was their opening. Not a physical weakness, but a crisis of purpose. Then stop using it like you did before, Naruto said, ignoring the apron, stepping closer again. This world doesn't need a god of pain. It's got enough of its own weird kind. Maybe it needs something else. Pain's Rinnegan fixed on him. What could it possibly need from me? I don't know, Naruto admitted. But I know running around replacing stuff with lemonade isn't it. You're confused. I get it. This place confuses me every second. But we can figure it out. Without hurting anyone. For a long moment, the distorted Akatsuki member just stared. The cracks around his closed eye seemed to pulse. The whoopee cushion deflated with a long, sad sigh. Then, his head tilted. We? Yeah. Me. My sensei. Even the people in this house. They're chaotic and they don't get it, but they're trying. We can help you. It was a naive, Naruto-like offer. And for a heartbeat, Kakashi saw something in the figure's posture shift, a weariness so deep it eclipsed even the madness. The echo of the man Naruto had once reached. Then, from the fiction aisle, Brian's voice rang out, clear and dripping with cynical commentary. Oh, this is rich. The messiah of mounting suffering getting a pep talk from the pumpkin-headed optimist. Tell me, does the path of figuring it out include a 2-drink minimum? The moment shattered. Pain's head snapped towards Brian's voice. His visible Rinnegan swirled, and the distortion field around him spiked violently. A talking dog. A cynical talking dog. Of course. The universe reserves its final, most exquisite joke for me. Brian, shut up. Naruto yelled. But it was too late. The fragile thread of connection had been severed by a quip. Pain's face hardened, the confusion burned away by a resurgence of bitter, divine purpose. You speak of help, Naruto Uzumaki, but you bring me to a temple of dead trees and surround me with jesters. My pain may be mocked, but it is still mine. And it is the only real thing in this plastic world. He raised a hand. Not in a specific jutsu seal, but in a gesture of gathering, of focus. The 6 tangled chakra paths within him flared in agonizing unison. If the universe will not take my pain seriously, I will make it indistinguishable from the farce. Almighty Friday. It wasn't the universe-attracting force of the Chibaku Tensei. It was its deranged cousin. The gravity in the room didn't increase, it changed. It became the gravity of a punchline waiting for its setup. Books flew off the shelves, not towards a central point, but in complex, loopy patterns, forming a giant, rotating question mark in the air. The display case holding Moby Dick melted into a puddle of liquid glass that then solidified into a perfect, miniature bowling ball. Peter was lifted from his chair and began to gently bounce off the ceiling like a human balloon. And Naruto felt it, a pull not on his body, but on his seriousness. It was a draining, dizzying sensation, as if the core of his resolve, his ninja way, was being sucked out to fuel this catastrophic joke. He's not trying to destroy the building, Kakashi shouted over the bizarre noise, a sound like a laugh track mixed with ringing bells. He's trying to destroy meaning itself. Stewie, now. From the baby carrier, Stewie unleashed his countermeasure. Not the suburban dampener, but a device he'd cobbled together from a hairdryer and a car stereo subwoofer. It emitted a piercing, high-frequency screech and a soul-crushingly bland audio loop of a man describing his mortgage refinancing options. The annoyance ray hit the field of distorted gravity. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The two opposing forces, absurdist gravity and aggressive normality, didn't cancel. They bred. With a sound like a universe clearing its throat, the entire special collections room flipped. Not spatially. Conventionally. For 3 seconds, everything operated like a tired family sitcom. The floating books became a canned, whoosh sound effect. Peter's bouncing became a series of quick cuts showing him in increasingly silly hats. The melted glass bowling ball acquired googly eyes. Then the effect broke, overwhelmed by pain's raw power. The backlash was a visible shockwave of pure meta. It slammed into pain. He didn't cry out in pain. He gasped, as if he'd been intellectually insulted. The cracks around his closed eye spiderwedged further. One of the Rinnegan's concentric rings in his open eye flickered and turned a faint, ridiculous pink. You weaponized banality," he choked out, more offended than wounded. "Disengage," Kakashi ordered. He grabbed a disoriented Naruto, still in the apron, and flashed through hand signs. Earth style, hiding like a mole technique. The library floor swallowed them just as Pain, regaining his composure with a furious dignity, raised both hands. The last thing Naruto saw from his descending tunnel of dirt was the entire special collections room, and the cynical dog in it, being enveloped in a shimmering, translucent bubble that smelled faintly of citrus and existential dread. They emerged, filthy and gasping, in the Griffin backyard. The radio in Lois's hand crackled to life. It was Brian's voice, but it was flat, monotone, stripped of all wit. "This is Brian. I am in a bubble. The bubble is lemon-scented. The books are floating. The plot, as they say, has not so much thickened as congealed into a puzzling aspic. Send help. Or a very serious critic. The transmission dissolved into the soft, easy-listening Muzak version of My Heart Will Go On." Lois's hand went to her mouth. Meg started to cry. Chris just said, "Whoa." Naruto ripped the apron off, his face a storm of frustration and guilt. "We almost had him. We were so close." "And we learned what we needed," Kakashi said, brushing dirt from his vest. His voice was tired. "He is compromised. Unstable. But his core power is adapting, becoming something new and unpredictable. He is not the strategic threat he was. He is a natural disaster of tone. And he has Brian." Stewie, extracted from the carrier, looked uncharacteristically shaken. "The feedback, my instruments, the very concept of conflict between our modes of existence nearly created a localized reality crash. We cannot fight him on the level of power or absurdity. They feed each other." Peter, who had popped out of a hole a few feet away, having apparently dug his own way out with his hands, nodded sagely. "Yeah. That guy's a buzzkill with good special effects. So what's the plan? Do we, throw a really boring party to lure him out?" Naruto wasn't listening. He was staring at his hands, clenched into fists. He had reached Pain once with the truth of his own pain and hope. That truth was still in him. But this time, it had been undone by a sarcastic comment from a dog. The rules were wrong. The battlefield was unfair. He thought of Brian, trapped in a bubble of serious lemon-scented contemplation. A prisoner of a joke that had stopped being funny. A new resolve, harder and sharper than his earlier optimism, crystallized within him. He couldn't save Nagato again. That man was gone, dissolved in the acid bath of Quahog's indifference. But he could save the people here. He could get Brian back. And to do that, he wouldn't fight Pain's power, or this world's absurdity. He would have to speak a language they both understood, but in a key neither had tried before. He would have to be, for the first time, utterly, deadly serious in a world that refused to be. He looked at the worried, confused faces of the Griffins, his unlikely, chaotic, chosen family. "We're getting Brian back," Naruto stated, his voice quiet but ironclad. "And we're not asking nicely this time." The comedy was over. The path of Pain had become a road paved with bad jokes. And Naruto Uzumaki was done being the punchline. Chapter 4, The Taste of Quiet Rage. The Griffin household had known many moods: Peter's bombastic joy, Lois's exasperated fury, Meg's depressive sighs, Stewie's megalomaniacal glee. But the mood that settled over 31 Spooner Street in the wake of Brian's capture was a new one, a kind of hollow, anxious quiet, punctuated only by the tinny, easy-listening music that still occasionally crackled from the radio. It was the sound of a missing punchline. Naruto's silence was the most unnerving. The whirlwind of clones, the loud proclamations, the relentless databao, all had ceased. He sat at the kitchen table, a cold cup of ramen forgotten before him, staring at the wall with an intensity that made the floral wallpaper seem to wilt. His fingers traced the grain of the wood, methodically, as if reading a tactical map only he could see. Lois watched him from the sink, her hands submerged in soapy water but not moving. She saw not a bizarre superhero, but a boy shouldering a burden he didn't ask for. "Naruto," she said softly, breaking the long silence. "You should eat." "He took Brian because of me," Naruto said, his voice low and raspy. "I tried to talk. I tried the way that worked before. But this place, it twists everything. It made my words into a setup for Brian's joke. And pain twisted the joke into a cage." He finally looked up, his blue eyes shadowed. "My way doesn't work here, Lois-san." "Took you long enough to notice, knucklehead," Kurama grumbled, but the usual bite was absent. The fox's presence in Naruto's mind was a watchful, simmering ember. This is not a world of shinobi honor or tragic backstories. It's a world of noise. To be heard, you cannot add to the noise. You must become the silence that comes after. Peter, for once, wasn't making noise either. He was sitting in his recliner, not watching TV, just staring at Brian's empty dog bed. "He owes me $20, Peter said, not as a joke, but as a statement of profound, personal loss. And he's the only one who gets my references to French New Wave cinema." Well, he pretended to, but still. It was Stewie who, after hours of furious, silent tinkering in the garage, finally presented a plan. He marched into the living room, a new device, a wrist-mounted console with a small screen, strapped to his chubby arm. "I have isolated the bubble's energy signature," Stewie announced, his voice lacking its usual theatrical flair. It was clipped, professional. It's a stable pocket dimension sustained by a feedback loop between Payne's distorted gravitational control and the inherent narrative inertia of a library. It's not meant to be a prison. It's a diorama. A perfectly sealed, lemon-scented exhibit titled The Folly of Cynicism. Brian is likely physically unharmed but experiencing severe ontological distress. "English, Stewie," Peter demanded, though without his usual volume. "He's in a boring, smell-good snow globe," Stewie translated. "And I can find the snow globe." He tapped his screen, displaying a map of Quahog. A single, pulsing dot glowed faintly over the library, but it was blurry, shifting. "The bubble exists in a phase state between our reality and Payne's controlled distortion field. It's moving, but along a predictable path. He's keeping it with him. A trophy, or perhaps a reminder." Kakashi, who had been meditating in a corner to conserve his dwindling chakra, opened his eye. "Can you predict his next location? Based on his pattern of targeting civic institutions with ironic impotence?" Stewie pulled up a list. "The most probable targets are the Quahog Museum of Taxidermy and Dental History, the world's largest ball of twine roadside attraction, which is under dispute with Branson, Missouri, or the annual Miss Quahog Clam Bacon Scholarship Pageant, which is tonight." "The pageant," Lois and Kakashi said simultaneously. Lois continued, "It's the biggest civic event of the season. The mayor crowns the winner. It's all pomp, circumstance, and outdated gender norms. It's the most serious joke in town." "It is a perfect target for his particular brand of existential vandalism," Kakashi agreed. "A large, captive audience for his lesson in meaningless." Naruto pushed back from the table. The chair legs scraped the linoleum like a knife being drawn. "Then that's where we go. Not to talk. To get Brian back." "How?" Meg's voice was small from the staircase. "He turned your clothes into an apron. He made books fly in a question mark. What can you do?" Naruto turned to look at her, and for a moment, Meg saw something in his eyes that made her shrink back, not out of fear of him, but fear for him. It was a look of absolute, terrifying focus, stripped of all warmth. "He uses a power that messes with meaning," Naruto said. "He turns serious things into jokes, and pain into lemonade. My power has always been about never giving up. About believing in people so loudly it becomes a kind of truth." He clenched his fist, and a wisp of orange chakra, sharp and hot, flickered around it. "But here, loud truths just get laughed off. So I won't be loud." "You will be sharp," Kurama intoned, a note of approval in his voice. "You will be a single point of absolute intent in this fuzzy world. No clones. No giant raisingans. No speeches. Just the truth, honed to a cutting edge." "I will use only one technique," Naruto declared, looking at Kakashi. "The one that can't be turned into a joke, because it's not a performance. It's a promise." Kakashi's visible eye widened in understanding, then narrowed in concern. The Rasengan. Pure chakra form manipulation. No elements. No grand philosophy. Just spinning energy. But Naruto, your chakra reserves are limited. I know. So I'll only get one shot. Naruto's gaze was unwavering. I'm not aiming for him. I'm aiming for the bubble. Stewie adjusted his device. Theoretically, a concentrated burst of pure, unadulterated chakra could disrupt the feedback loop sustaining the pocket dimension. It would be like poking a hole in the soap bubble. But you'd have to hit the exact resonant frequency point. My scanner can identify it, but the window would be fleeting. I won't miss. The plan was simple, almost suicidally so. Infiltration, not confrontation. They would use the chaos of the pageant as cover. Stewie's scanner would pinpoint the bubble's phase location. Kakashi would provide a diversion. Naruto would make the shot. As they prepared to leave, Lois stopped Naruto at the door. She put a hand on his arm. He felt surprisingly solid, like granite wrapped in orange fabric. Naruto, she said, her voice fierce. Brian is family. Bring him home. But you come home too. Understand? Naruto looked at her, and for a second, the shadow over his eyes lifted, revealing the earnest boy beneath. I will, Lois-san. Believe it. The Quahog annual clam bake and scholarship pageant was a spectacle of small-town America in all its gloriously tacky, self-important splendor. Bunting fluttered under stadium lights set up on the football field. A stage had been erected, adorned with giant painted clamshells. The air was thick with the smell of fried dough, beer, and Naruto, Kakashi, and Stewie, again in the carrier, now with a black visor over his face, moved through the crowd unseen. Naruto's transformation into normal, Quahog teen clothes, a baggy hoodie and jeans, was seamless, a skill learned from 1,000 infiltration missions. But underneath, he was a coiled spring. Chakra signature is present, Stewie whispered into the comms unit they all wore, stolen from Peter's old airsoft gear. He's here. And he's not hiding. He's in the crowd, near the front. The bubble signature is overlapping his. He's literally carrying it with him. Kakashi's Sharingan, hidden behind sunglasses, scanned ahead. I see him. Third row from the stage, left of the aisle. He's watching. And he was. Pain stood among the townsfolk, a stark, solemn monument amidst a sea of Hawaiian shirts and novelty hats. No one seemed to notice the man in the apocalyptic cloak. He was just another weirdo in a town of them. His single, cracked Rinnegan was fixed on the stage, where Mayor West was droning on about civic pride and the moral virtues of a well-shucked bivalve. The emptiness is palpable, Pain's voice whispered, though only Naruto and Kakashi, their senses tuned to chakra, seemed to hear it over the crowd noise. It was a broadcast of thought, not sound. They dress their vacuity in ceremony. They award scholarships based on the ability to smile while balancing a clam on one's head. This is the pinnacle of their culture. It must be annotated. He's going to make his move during the talent portion, Kakashi deduced. The peak of their sincere effort. That's when the contrast will be most profound for him. On stage, the first contestant, a girl named Susie Swanson, began her talent, interpretive dance to the theme from Chariots of Fire, using 2 large oyster shells as props. Now, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said, his voice a flat line. Kakashi nodded. He melted into the crowd, heading not for Pain, but for the stage's main power relay box, a nondescript metal cabinet off to the side. Susie Swanson reached her crescendo, leaping with shells outstretched. Pain raised a single hand, his fingers beginning to curl. Kakashi reached the power box. With a subtle pulse of lightning chakra, he shorted the main breaker. The stadium lights, the PA system, the canned music, everything died with a dramatic pop and a shower of sparks from the box. The field was plunged into near darkness, lit only by emergency exit signs and the moon. A collective, oh, of surprise, not panic, went up from the crowd. On stage, Susie Swanson, mid-leap, was silhouetted against the night sky, her oyster shells catching the moonlight. For a second, it was accidentally beautiful, profound even. And it was in that second of unexpected, sincere beauty that Pain hesitated. His plan was for ironic contrast, grand music, pathetic dance. This sudden, silent, moonlit tableau was, off-script. It was genuinely poignant. That hesitation was the window. Stewie, now. Naruto hissed, already moving, the hoodie thrown off to reveal his orange jacket beneath. The resonance point. It's shifting, now. 10 meters ahead of him, 2 meters high. A 3-foot diameter sphere. You have 3 seconds. Naruto didn't run through the crowd. He moved over it. A single, chakra-enhanced leap carried him from the ground, over the heads of the confused Quahojins, a shadow against the moon. He saw it. Not with his eyes, but with his chakra sense, guided by Stewie's data, a shimmering, transparent distortion in the air, like heat haze, within which a tiny, frozen figure of a dog sitting in a library chair could be glimpsed. Pain's head snapped up, his Rinnegan fixing on the flying ninja. You. Again. With your futile persistence. He didn't use a grandiose technique. He simply pointed at Naruto, and the gravity around Naruto warped. It wasn't a push or a pull. It tried to make his trajectory funny. It tried to curve his flight path into a silly, looping spiral, to make him land with a comical squeak. Naruto felt the absurdity tug at him, a psychic rubber chicken trying to trip him up. He shut it out. He focused on one thing only, the spinning sphere of chakra already forming in his right palm. Not the giant Raisin Shuriken, not a variation. The original, perfect Rasengan. A ball of pure, undiluted, screaming energy. The physical manifestation of a promise kept through sheer, grinding will. He poured his frustration into it, the confusion, the guilt over Brian, the anger at this world for mocking his ideals. But he also poured his determination to protect this bizarre, broken family that had taken him in. The Rasengan, usually a bright, blue-white, flickered with orange and blue, a miniature storm of conflicting emotions forged into a single, unwavering purpose. The gravitational distortion bent space, but it couldn't bend that. You cannot speak to me with power. Pain intoned. Power here is a cartoon. I'm not talking. Naruto roared, a raw, primal sound that cut through the murmuring crowd. I'm taking back what's mine. He thrust the Rasengan forward, not at Pain, but at the empty air 2 meters in front of the Akatsuki member. The Rasengan connected with the invisible resonance point. There was no explosion. There was a shudder. A shudder that passed through reality itself, visible as a ripple in the light, in the sound, in the very concept of the moment. It was the sound of a sustained note suddenly cracking. The lemon-scented bubble shattered. Not with a bang, but with a sound like 1,000 pages being gently torn at once. The pocket dimension disintegrated, and its contents were dumped unceremoniously back into standard Quahog reality. Brian Griffin, still in his sitting position, dropped 2 feet through the air and landed with a soft thump on the grass between Pain and the stage. He blinked, looked around at the dark stadium, the silent, staring crowd, the moonlit ninja, and the cloaked figure of cosmic angst. He cleared his throat. So, Brian said, his voice dry. I see the Deus Ex Machina arrived. And it's wearing orange. How predictably underwhelming. Pain stared, first at the freed dog, then at Naruto, who landed softly in a crouch before him, the light of the fading Rasengan still dancing on his palm. The Rinnegan swirled with a mix of fury, confusion, and something else, a dawning, horrifying respect. You did not attack the symptom. You attacked the disease. You broke the idea of the prison. The cracks on Pain's face seemed to deepen. You are learning the rules of this meaningless game. I'm not playing a game, Naruto said, straightening up, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The single Rasengan had taken more from him than he'd expected. The ambient chakra here was like trying to breathe through a thick syrup. I'm protecting my people. Brian's one of them. You don't get to keep him. The crowd, recovering from the blackout, began to murmur. A spotlight, powered by a backup generator, flickered on and swept across the field, landing on the 3 of them, the ninja, the dog, and the apocalyptic clown. Hey, it's that lemonade guy, someone yelled, and the dog from the news. And is that the kid from the brewery? He's back. Pain looked from Naruto to the gathering, gawking crowd. Their attention was not fearful, but curious, entertained. They were an audience, and he was part of the show. The ultimate insult. His shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in a profound, universe-weary disappointment. This is your victory? To be a curiosity for these consumers? He didn't wait for an answer. With a final, disdainful look at the crowd that was now pointing cell phones at him, his form shimmered. He didn't vanish in a swirl of paper or leaves. He simply stepped backwards, and the space he occupied folded him away, like a closing book. He was gone, leaving behind only a faint, lingering scent of citrus and despair. The spotlight held on Naruto and Brian. Brian got to his feet, brushed off his fur, and walked over to Naruto. He looked up at the panting, exhausted young man. You know, Brian said, his cynicism a thin veneer over something shaken. For a guy who talks about bonds and believes it, you've got a surprisingly effective flair for the dramatic rescue. Also, my existential dread has existential dread now. I need a very strong drink. A grin, the first genuine one in days, broke through Naruto's stern expression. It was tired, but it was real. Welcome back, Brian. From the edge of the field, unseen in the chaos, Kakashi lowered his sunglasses. His Sharingan had captured it all, not just the events, but the subtle chakra readings. Pain's departure wasn't a retreat to lick wounds. It was a strategic withdrawal. He had tested Naruto's new resolve and found it pointed, dangerous, and adaptable. The next encounter would not be about ironic statements. It would be personal. And high above, in the inky black of the Quahog night sky, a pair of eyes watched from the belly of a clay bird that flew with impossible silence. The eyes, a Sharingan and a Rinnegan, observed the scene below with cold, analytical interest. Interesting, a voice, smooth as oil, whispered to the wind. The Ninetales Jinchuriki adapts. And dear Nagato, succumbs to local color. The experiment progresses. The merger promises unique data. The clay bird banked silently, heading away from the town, towards the darker, quieter edges of the merged reality, where other experiments could be conducted away from prying, orange-clad eyes. Chapter 5, A Glimpse of the Mask. The victory at the pageant was pyrrhic and strange. Brian was home, but he moved through the Griffin house like a ghost, jumping at sudden noises and developing an intense, philosophical aversion to the smell of lemon pledge. The easy-listening music had stopped, but a new, heavier silence had taken its place. Naruto's chakra exhaustion was profound. For 2 days, he could barely summon a single shadow clone to help with dishes. He slept for 16 hours straight, and when he woke, his movements were leaden, the usual crackle of energy around him muted to a faint, tired hum. Kakashi watched him with clinical concern, rationing his own dwindling chakra reserves like a man crossing a desert. The environment is leeching us, Kakashi confirmed during a hushed conversation in the backyard. He was doing simple chakra control exercises, trying to tease the thin, sugary energy of Quahog into something usable. It was like trying to spin gold from cotton candy. Our bodies are filters designed for a richer medium. Here, we are slowly suffocating. Naruto, sitting on the back steps, nodded. He felt it, a constant, low-grade fatigue that no amount of Lois's meatloaf could fix. We need a source. Something from our world that hasn't been. Quahog iffied. The merger points, Kakashi said. Where the walls are thin. The energy there is mixed, but it might be closer to what we need. We must find one and establish a foothold. A base of operations beyond this house. The Griffins cannot be our front line forever. Stewie, overhearing from his open nursery window, leaned out. A base of operations? You mean a lair? Finally, we're speaking my language. I've been conducting spectral analysis of the dimensional stress fractures. The most consistent and powerful is not in town. He produced a map, pointing a chubby finger at a wooded area on the outskirts of Quahog, near the cliffs overlooking the ocean. Here. The locals call it the Giggling Gorge. A place of supposed natural beauty and, according to town legend, a vortex of mild but persistent weirdness. Hikers report losing socks, hearing faint laugh tracks on the wind, that sort of thing. My readings show a constant, low-level bleed of your chakra mixing with what I can only describe as background cartoon radiation. It's the most stable unstable point in the county. It was decided. A reconnaissance mission. Naruto, still weak, would stay with Lois to protect the house and continue recovering. Kakashi and Stewie, in a heavily modified, armored baby backpack, would survey the gorge. Brian, citing a need to reaffirm my connection to the mundane through a bender, opted to stay at the Drunken Clam, though he promised to keep an ear out for strange rumors. Peter, of course, invited himself. A gorge that giggles? That's where I keep my emergency beer cooler. I hid it from Lois after the Great Sausage Embargo of '09. I can be your guide. And if we find any dimensional monsters, I've still got the potato cannon. And so, the unlikely quartet, the legendary copy ninja, the infant supervillain, the town oaf, and his potato-based artillery, set out for the Giggling Gorge. The gorge lived up to its name. It was a picturesque cleft in the landscape, with a babbling brook at the bottom. But the babbling had a curious, rhythmic quality to it, like a muted sitcom laugh track. The wind through the pines didn't sigh, it made a soft, woo-woo sound. When Peter tripped over a root, instead of a thud, the impact produced a subtle, percussive boink. Fascinating, Stewie murmured, his scanner whirring from the backpack on Kakashi's back. The local reality is permanently punched up. It's like living inside a rejected cartoon pilot. And look, the chakra residue is strongest near the waterfall. They pushed through the dense, oddly springy undergrowth towards the sound of rushing water. The waterfall was small but pretty, cascading into a clear, rocky pool. And there, etched into the stone behind the curtain of water, was a symbol. It wasn't a natural formation. It was a spiral. A familiar, hypnotic, orange spiral. Kakashi's hand went to his kunai pouch. That's not a natural dimensional bleed. That's a marker. A seal. Ooh, graffiti. Peter said, pulling out a can of spray paint from his jacket. I'll add my tag. The P-train was here. Peter, don't you dare, Kakashi began, but it was too late. Peter gave the can a vigorous shake and sprayed a wobbly Peter next to the spiral. The effect was instantaneous and violent. The spiral flared with a sickly, orange light. The cartoonish sounds of the gorge cut out, replaced by a dead, electric silence. The space in front of the waterfall rippled, like the surface of a pond struck by a stone. From the ripple, a figure emerged. He was tall, wearing the same black cloak with red clouds as Pain, but his posture was different, lounging, almost casual. His face was obscured by a swirl of something viscous and orange. A single, dark eye peered out from the swirl. The other side of his face was a void, from which a single, Sharingan red eye glowed with malevolent curiosity. Well, the figure said, his voice light, amused, and as slippery as oil. Visitors. And one of them is, creatively defacing my welcome mat. How very. Quahog. Kakashi pushed Peter behind him in one fluid motion. His own Sharingan was exposed and spinning, analyzing. The chakra signature was overwhelming, a black hole of controlled power, but it was also clean. Unaffected by the distortion that plagued Pain. This being had adapted perfectly. Obito Uchiha, Kakashi breathed, the name a poison on his tongue. Kakashi-senpai, Obito replied, the title dripping with mock affection. Or should I say, Kakashi of the Sharingan. It's been a while. You've aged. This place seems to have a flattening effect on dramatic gravitas, doesn't it? What are you doing here? Kakashi's voice was ice. Observing. Experimenting. This merger is a fascinating petri dish. Obito's visible eye swept over them, lingering on Stewie in his backpack. A world without true consequence, without grand narrative, without the weight of a bloody history. It's the perfect place to test a hypothesis. What hypothesis? Kakashi demanded, his mind racing. Obito was here, sane, and in control. This was a catastrophe of a different magnitude. That in the absence of meaningful pain, meaningful change is impossible, Obito said, as if discussing the weather. Nagato was my first test subject. I nudged him through an early rift. I wanted to see if his path of pain could find purchase in soil this shallow. As you've seen, it fermented. Became something sour and ridiculous. Proof of concept 1, grand idealism rots into farce here. He took a step forward. The air around him didn't warp with absurdity, it thinned, becoming deadly serious. The boinks and woo-woos of the gorge were silenced in a 10-foot radius around him. You and the Ninetales brat are proof of concept 2. You cling to your bonds, your will of fire. But how brightly can it burn when the air itself refuses to take it seriously? You're exhausted, Kakashi. I can see it. You're a sublime masterpiece trying to function in a world of clip art. Stewie, from the backpack, whispered furiously into his comms, Kakashi, his dimensional frequency is locked. He's not bleeding power like the other one. He's using the merge as a conduit. He's siphoning chakra from the bleed points, refining it. He's winning at this. And you, Obito said, his eye now fixing on Peter, who was hiding behind Kakashi, the spray paint can still in his hand. You are the control group. The native specimen. A man whose entire life is a series of reset buttons. No lesson learned, no consequence endured, no growth achieved. Perfect, static, meaningless life. You are what this world produces. And you are what the infinite Tsukuyomi, in its final, perfect form, would offer everyone, an eternity of amusing inconsequence. Peter blinked. Hey, are you dissing my life? I'll have you know I once saved this town from a giant chicken. That's consequence. Obito chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. A consequence that was forgotten by the next episode. No, Mr. Griffin. You are the ultimate argument for my plan. Why struggle? Why fight? Why bear pain? This world has solved it. It has made pain a gag, failure a pratfall, and life a rerun. My goal was to give that gift to everyone. And here it is, already built. I just need to study the blueprints. Kakashi's mind was a storm of tactical calculations. Fighting here was impossible. Obito was at full power, anchored by the rift. They were weakened, surrounded by a civilian and a baby. Disengage. Warned Naruto. Peter, Kakashi said, his voice deadly calm. When I say run, you run back the way we came. Don't stop. Don't look back. But my beer cooler. Run. Kakashi's hands flashed through signs. Lightning style, lightning beast tracking Fang. He didn't aim for Obito. He aimed for the ground at Obito's feet, creating a blinding flash of light and a cloud of electrified dust. In that instant, Peter turned and bolted with a speed surprising for his bulk, crashing through the underbrush like a panicked moose. Obito didn't even move. The lightning passed through him as if he were a mirage. His Kamui. Intact, perfect. Running is the wise choice, Obito mused, watching Peter flee. But unnecessary. I'm not here to fight you today, Kakashi. I'm here to deliver an invitation. The dust settled. Obito stood, pristine. He reached into his cloak and pulled out not a weapon, but a small, rectangular object. He tossed it at Kakashi's feet. It was a DVD. The cover was blank, jet black. A gift, Obito said. Footage from my observations. Of your world. Of the people you left behind. I've been keeping an eye on things. The merge works both ways. Passages are opening. Not just for bits of chakra or broken messiahs. For people. A cold dread, deeper than any he'd felt in Quahog, seized Kakashi's heart. Watch it, Obito said, his form beginning to dissolve, not into the ripple, but simply fading, as if he were a projection being switched off. See what your absence has wrought. And then consider my offer. Your struggle is a fossil here, Kakashi. Align with me. Help me understand this place completely. And I will ensure your precious hidden leaf suffers less when the walls finally come down forever. He was gone. The spiral on the rock faded back to a mere etching. The cartoon sounds of the gorge slowly returned, the giggled brook, the woo-wooing pines. Kakashi stood frozen, the black DVD case at his feet feeling heavier than a mountain. Stewie slowly unclipped himself from the backpack and waddled over. He picked up the DVD, turning it over in his hands. No manufacturer markings. The disc itself has a peculiar data signature. It's hybrid. Digital information encoded with a chakra carrier wave. It can only be played on a device saturated with this world's energy. A normal DVD player would melt. He looked up at Kakashi, whose Sharingan was still spinning, fixed on the empty space where Obito had been. The copy ninja's face was pale. He's not mad, Kakashi whispered, the horror of it dawning. He's not distorted. He's inspired. He sees this place not as an obstacle, but as the ultimate validation of his dream. And he's using the merge as a two-way window. What's on the disc? Stewie asked, though he dreaded the answer. Kakashi finally looked down, his eye meeting Stewie's. The weight of a lifetime of war and loss was in his gaze. A threat. Not to us. To everyone we left behind. They returned to Spooner Street in silence. Peter, who had made it to the car and was hyperventilating into a paper bag, babbled about swirly-faced death ghosts, but no one listened. Naruto met them at the door, his energy slightly recovered, his eyes sharp. He took one look at Kakashi's face and the black DVD in Stewie's hand, and his own expression hardened. What happened? Obito, Kakashi said, the single word hanging in the entryway like a death knell. Lois, who had come to see what was wrong, put a hand over her mouth. Brian, nursing a hangover on the couch, sat up slowly. Kakashi explained, his report clinical, detached, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. He told them of the spiral, the perfect, adapted Obito, his chilling analysis of their world, his offer. And this? Naruto asked, pointing to the DVD. Intel, Kakashi said. Or poison. He said it's from home. They gathered around the TV in the living room, a strange, solemn audience. Stewie had modified the Griffin's DVD player with parts from his disruptor, creating a chakra-conductive reader. He inserted the black disc. The screen remained black for a long moment. Then, static resolved into an image. It was shaky, handheld, seen from a high vantage point, through the branches of a tree. The image was of the Hidden Leaf Village. But it was wrong. The streets were too quiet. The Hokage monument was scarred, not from battle, but with graffiti. Strange, blocky symbols that hurt the eyes to look at. And the people, they moved with a lethargic, shuffling gait. Their expressions were blank, not like mindless Edo Tensei, but like people deeply, profoundly bored. A child dropped an ice cream cone and didn't cry, he just stared at it melting, then walked away. The camera panned. There, in the main square, was a makeshift stage. On it, bound and gagged, were two people Naruto knew better than anyone in the world. Sakura Haruno and Shikamaru Nara. They weren't bruised or bloodied. They looked furious, humiliated, and utterly confused. Standing over them was a figure Naruto didn't recognize at first. A man in a garish, pinstriped suit, with a pencil-thin mustache and a laugh that crackled from the speaker, a loud, braying "NYHHA." "Citizens of the Leaf," the man announced, puffing out his chest. "Your champions. Defeated not by ninjutsu, but by the power of ridiculous contracts and fine print. I, the great Goro Gadoishi, have legally annexed this village through a leveraged buyout of your municipal debt. Your Hokage signed the papers. Look. Clause 14, subsection B, in event of default, all chakra-based assets are forfeit." He waved a scroll covered in dizzying, microscopic text. The crowd of villagers just stared, blankly. "Sakura-chan." "Shikamaru," Naruto whispered, his hands gripping the arms of the recliner so hard the fabric tore. The image cut to another scene. The forest of death. But the trees were now neon pink and purple. Giant, plush-looking bears with the Sharingan pattern stitched into their eyes roamed, making cute, rawr sounds. A team of genin, tied up with bright ribbon, looked on in despair. The final image was of the Hokage's office. Tsunade was at her desk, her head in her hands. Stacked before her were not mission reports, but reams of paperwork, legal tomes, and several whoopee cushions. The camera zoomed in on a document. The header read, "Acquisition and Rebranding Proposal, the Hidden Leaf Village, to be henceforth known as Funtime Ninja Adventure Park, a subsidiary of Gadoishi Conglomerate." The screen went black. The living room was tomb silent. The only sound was the low hum of the modified DVD player. Naruto was on his feet. His chakra, depleted moments before, erupted from him in a silent, crimson-tinged wave. The lights in the house flickered. The windows rattled. Lois stumbled back. Peter yelped. "Calm down, you idiot." Kurama roared inside him. "This is what he wants. He wants you angry, rash, wasting the little power you have." But Naruto wasn't listening. The image of Sakura and Shikamaru, bound and humiliated by a clown in a suit, was burning behind his eyes. His home, turned into a joke. Not a violent, painful joke like Pain's, but a cheap, corporate, soul-crushing joke. "He's not attacking them with power," Kakashi said, his voice hollow. "He's importing this world's weapons. Legal absurdity. Corporate takeover. Nonsense as a weapon of conquest. He's testing it on our home first." Stewie ejected the disc, his face uncharacteristically grim. "It's a demonstration. He's showing you he can reach both ways. And he's showing you the most effective way to conquer a world of shinobi honor. Don't fight it. Out absurd it." Naruto turned, his eyes blazing with a blue fire that had nothing to do with Kurama. The fatigue, the confusion, the frustration, all of it was gone, burned away by a new, singular purpose. "We're not just stuck here," Naruto said, his voice low and vibrating with intensity. "We're stationed here. This is the front line. Obito isn't hiding in our world. He's using this one as a factory. A factory that makes weapons that turn our world into this." He gestured at the TV, at the room, at all of Quahog. He looked at the Griffin family, who stared back, wide-eyed, finally understanding the scale of the storm that had blown into their living room. He looked at Kakashi, his sensei, his comrade, who saw the same grim resolve reflected back at him. "We stop him here," Naruto declared. "We cut off the factory. We find his base, we find how he's crossing over, and we shut it down. Not to get home. To save home." He picked up the black DVD case. He didn't crush it. He held it carefully, as if it were a live bomb. Which it was. "This isn't an invitation," Naruto said, looking at the fearful, determined faces around him. "It's a declaration of war. And he just told us his battle plan." He allowed himself one last, searing look at the blank TV screen, where the image of his bound friends was seared into his memory. "Okay," Naruto Uzumaki said, a feral, terrifying grin spreading across his face. It held no humor, only the promise of a hurricane. "Now I'm angry." Chapter 6, The Council of War, and Meatloaf. The Griffin dining table was not built for war councils. Its surface, scarred by years of Peter's DIY projects and Chris's macaroni art, now groaned under the weight of Stewie's holographic projector, built from a toaster and a stolen laser pointer, Kakashi's annotated maps of Quahog, and Lois's untouched meatloaf, which sat like a brown monument to ignored normalcy. The mood had shifted from stunned horror to a grim, focused tension. Naruto's outburst had been a volcano, but the lava had cooled into a hard, obsidian determination. He sat at the head of the table, still pale from chakra depletion but with a straight-backed posture that made him look older. The orange of his jacket seemed less like a costume and more like a uniform. "We have 3 objectives," he began, his voice surprisingly calm. It was the voice he'd used to address the allied shinobi forces. It commanded attention. Even Peter, who was trying to balance a spoon on his nose, stopped. 1. Secure a reliable chakra source. We can't fight a war on fumes. 2. Find and disrupt Obito's operation. He's making crossings somewhere, using the dimensional bleed. 3. Defend Quahog from any more imports. We can't let this become a dumping ground for every twisted thing from our world. And what about the people already dumped here? Brian asked, swirling a glass of water. His cynicism had been sanded down to a sharp, pragmatic edge by his time in the bubble. The walking shark fragment? The lemonade sadist? Are they part of the cleanup? Pain is a victim, Naruto stated firmly. He's lost. We deal with him when we have to, but he's not the priority. The priority is the guy who sent him here as a lab rat. Stewie's hologram flickered to life above the meatloaf, displaying a 3D map of Quahog and the surrounding areas. Pulsing red dots marked known dimensional stress fractures. Our primary lead is the Giggling Gorge. It's the most active, and Obito used it as a personal post office. However, my long-range scans indicate the energy signature there is passive now, a receiver, not a transmitter. He's not operating from there. He was just visiting. So we need to find the transmitter, Kakashi said, tracing a line on his paper map with a finger. A place with a stronger, more focused bleed. Somewhere he can control the flow. It would need to be isolated, structurally sound to handle energy fluctuations, and likely have a symbolic or narrative weight that acts as an anchor. Lois, who had been listening quietly while cleaning the same spot on the counter for 5 minutes, spoke up. Isolated? Structurally sound? Symbolic weight? She put down her sponge. You're describing the old Quahog prophylactic factory. A beat of stunned silence. What now? Naruto asked. The condom factory, Peter clarified, grinning. Prophylactic. It closed down in the 80s. It's a big, concrete bunker of a building out on Route 2. No windows. They said it was for climate control. I say it was to hide the shame. And it's built on the old Quahog founding site, where Silas Quahog allegedly struck a deal with a mischievous groundhog for the town's name. It's got symbolic weight, all right. The weight of bad decisions and rubber. Stewie's tiny fingers flew across a keyboard. Satellite imagery overlaid with his chakra scans appeared on the hologram. He zoomed in on a large, nondescript concrete box on the outskirts of town. The scan showed a deep, throbbing purple pulse emanating from it, a stark contrast to the fuzzy red of the other fractures. Mother is disturbingly correct, Stewie announced. The energy signature is orders of magnitude stronger. It's not a bleed, it's a funnel. And it's emitting a carrier wave pattern that matches the chakra encoding on Obito's DVD. That's the transmitter. That's his beachhead. Then that's our target, Kakashi said. Reconnaissance. Infiltration. We need to know what he's sending, how he's controlling it, and what his endgame is. I'll go, Naruto said immediately. No, Kakashi countered, just as fast. You are still recovering. Your chakra signature is also the most recognizable. If he has sensors, you'll set off every alarm. This requires stealth and precision. I'll go. Alone. Don't be preposterous, Stewie sniffed. You'll blunder in there with your ninja stealth and trip over a metaphor. You need a guide to the local absurdity. And you need my tech to monitor the dimensional frequencies. I'm going. You're a baby, Brian pointed out. And you're a dog who writes stream-of-consciousness memoirs about his own ennui. Your point. I'm going too, Peter declared, pounding the table. The meatloaf jumped. That factory is on the way to my fishing spot. I know a secret way in. Through the old lubrication testing chimney. The idea of a covert infiltration team consisting of Kakashi Hatake, a megalomaniacal infant, and Peter Griffin was so profoundly absurd that for a moment, no one could speak. It was the perfect Quahog answer to a ninja problem. Naruto looked at Kakashi. A silent, resigned communication passed between them. In a world where a potato cannon was viable artillery, perhaps this was the optimal team. Fine, Kakashi sighed, the sound carrying the weight of 1,000 poor life choices. But you follow my lead. Absolutely no improvisation. No, hey, what does this button do? No referencing obscure pop culture at critical moments. Peter saluted, knocking over his glass of milk. Aye aye, Captain Grumpy Eye. The old Quahog prophylactic factory loomed under a moonless sky, a slab of 1970s industrial pessimism. The secret way in was, predictably, a disaster. Peter's lubrication testing chimney was a narrow, grease-caked metal tube that descended vertically for 30 feet. This is undignified, Stewie hissed, strapped to Kakashi's chest in a modified forward carrier, his face 2 inches from the slimy wall. Quiet, Kakashi whispered, his body moving with a spider's grace down the dark shaft, his feet and one hand finding invisible purchase on the slick metal. Peter, below them, was less graceful, making a series of wet, grunting sounds and one loud clang as his head hit a rivet. They dropped into a vast, dark chamber. The air was cold and smelled of stale rubber and something else, a sharp, ozone tang that was unmistakably chakra. Stewie's scanner, muted, cast a green glow on his face. He pointed wordlessly. Across the factory floor, amidst silent, hulking machinery that looked like forgotten metal dinosaurs, a structure had been built. It was not of this world. It was an archway, 15 feet tall, constructed of a strange, pearlescent material that seemed to drink the little light available. It looked like the frame of a giant, sideways hourglass. In the center of the arch, the space shimmered like a heat haze, showing a distorted, wavering image, the interior of a cave studded with glowing green crystals, the unmistakable landscape of one of the tailed beast sealing sights from their world. But the image was unstable. It flickered, and for a moment, it was replaced by the garish, neon interior of what looked like a pachinko parlor, then a serene shot of the Konoha Academy, then static. A stabilized, but poorly tuned, dimensional gate, Stewie breathed, his voice full of horrified awe. He's not just making rifts. He's building doors. And he's trying to aim them. Arrayed before the arch were workstations. Not computers, but scrolls and stone tablets, glowing with faint light. And moving between them were figures. Not Akatsuki. Not even human. They were small, white creatures with bulbous heads and featureless faces save for a single, swirling eye. Zetsu. The white Zetsu clones. But they were different. They wore tool belts. One was consulting a complex-looking flowchart pinned to a machine. Another was carefully adjusting a dial on the side of the arch with a spanner. He's industrialized it, Kakashi murmured, his Sharingan absorbing every detail. Using Zetsu as a workforce. They're not soldiers here, they're technicians. Peter, peering from behind a giant drum of what was hopefully inert lubricant, whispered, "Who are the little bald guys? They look like walking mushrooms." Hee, shroom workers. Before Kakashi could shush him, a door on the far side of the factory hissed open. A figure strode in, his presence immediately drawing the focus of the Zetsu workers. It wasn't Obito. It was a man with blue skin, amber eyes, and 2 small horns on his forehead. He wore a simple gray cloak. In their world, he was a figure of myth and terror. Here, he looked, annoyed. The resonance with location 7 is still off by 0.03 chakra hertz, the blue man said, his voice a deep, resonant bass that echoed in the cavernous space. He was examining a scroll one of the Zetsu handed him. The cultural contamination is unacceptable. We cannot have the Land of Waves gateway syncing with a bargain barn outlet. It ruins the symbolic purity. Recalibrate using the secondary frequency matrix. Kakashi's blood ran cold. Kisame Hoshigaki. The monster of the hidden mist. A loyal, brutal member of Akatsuki. And he was here, managing logistics. Kisame, Kakashi whispered, the name barely audible. As if hearing his thoughts, Kisame's head snapped up. His shark-like eyes narrowed, scanning the darkness. We have a discrepancy in the ambient chakra field. White Zetsu 6, run a diagnostic on the perimeter seals. A Zetsu near the arch nodded and began to shuffle towards their hiding place, its single eye glowing. We're made, Kakashi said. Fall back. Now. But Peter, in his attempt to turn, kicked a loose pipe. It clattered across the concrete floor with a noise like a gong. Every Zetsu head turned. Kisame's face split into a wide, toothy grin. Well now. Vermin in the machinery. Plan B. Stewie yelled, and slapped a large button on the front of his carrier. A device on Kakashi's back whirred to life and emitted a deafening, ear-splitting screech mixed with the relentless, upbeat jingle of a Quahog used car commercial. The sonic and cognitive dissonance ray. The Zetsu technicians clutched their headplants, confused and disoriented. But Kisame just laughed, the sound cutting through the noise. Cute. He didn't even draw Samahata. He simply raised a hand. Water style, 1,000 feeding sharks. From the moisture in the factory air, and there was plenty, given the old rubber processing, a school of a dozen watery, shark-shaped projectiles formed and surged across the open space towards their hiding spot with terrifying speed. This wasn't a distorted technique. This was the real, deadly thing, perfectly executed. Kakashi pushed Peter towards the chimney. Go. Climb. In the same motion, his hands flew through signs. Earth style, mud wall. A slab of concrete and earth erupted from the floor, intercepting the leading sharks. They tore through it like paper, but it bought a second. We cannot outrun that in a vertical tube. Stewie cried, firing a small laser from his wrist-mounted console that dissipated one shark into steam. Kakashi knew he was right. They were trapped. In a straight fight, in his weakened state, against a fully powered Kisame, in enemy territory, it was a death sentence. He made a decision. A desperate, stupid, Naruto-like decision. As the remaining sharks rounded the crumbling wall, Kakashi didn't try to block. He stepped in front of Peter and Stewie, his Sharingan spinning wildly. He wasn't going to counter the jutsu. He was going to analyze it, and himself, into the path. Kakashi, what are you? Stewie began. But it was too late. The watery sharks were upon them. At the last possible millisecond, Kakashi's body seemed to flicker, not away, but into the attack. He twisted, his movements a blur, his Sharingan predicting every droplet, every current. Instead of a crushing impact, there was a series of wet slaps and a spray of mist. Kakashi stood, swaying, his clothes torn and wet, but he was whole. He had used the absolute minimum movement, guided by the precognition of the Sharingan, to let the sharks almost hit him, their force expended on the air and machinery around him. It was a display of such insane, pinpoint precision that even Kisame paused, his grin fading into a look of professional appreciation. The copy ninja Kakashi, Kisame rumbled. I heard you were here. That was stylish. A waste of a good technique. Kakashi was breathing hard, his Sharingan eye bleeding. That stunt had cost him dearly. We're leaving. I don't think so, Kisame said, hefting Samahata now, the sentient sword scales rippling with hunger. The boss would like a word. And your chakra, it smells tired. Samahata is on a diet of this world's weak energy. A proper ninja's chakra would be a feast. Peter, seeing the giant, toothy sword, finally found his courage, or his idiocy. He stepped out from behind Kakashi, hefting his ever-present potato cannon. Back off, smug face. This spud's for you. He fired. The potato sailed in a perfect arc. Kisame watched it come, one eyebrow raised. He didn't move. Samahata, however, did. It writhed in his grip and, with a casual flick, intercepted the potato. There was a faint schlick sound. The potato was gone, absorbed. Samahata gave a satisfied, burbling shudder. Kisame said. Starchy. Low energy yield. Disappointing. In the moment of bizarre distraction, Stewie saw their chance. The sonic dissonance ray had shorted out, but the control console on his arm had a final option, a one-time, localized dimensional scrambler, designed to disrupt the gate. He aimed it not at Kisame, but at the base of the pearlescent arch. Everyone hold on to something non-metaphysical, he yelled, and triggered it. There was no explosion. The archway screamed. A high-pitched, tearing sound that came from everywhere and nowhere. The shimmering image in the gate fractured into a kaleidoscope of broken realities. The white Zetsu screeched and clutched their heads, some of them dissolving into puddles of protoplasm. The factory's lights, powered by the dimensional bleed, flickered and died, plunging them into absolute darkness save for the erratic, strobing chaos of the malfunctioning gate. Now! Kakashi grabbed Peter and, with the last of his strength, flung them both toward the base of the chimney pipe. Stewie clung on, his scanner providing a night vision green outline. They scrambled up, Peter wheezing, Kakashi pushing from below. Below, in the darkness, they heard Kisame's roar of fury, and the sound of Samahata cleaving through heavy machinery. They erupted from the top of the chimney into the cool night air and didn't stop running until they were hidden in the woods, the silent, ominous factory receding behind them. Back at the Griffin house, Naruto was waiting, pacing. He took one look at their torn clothes, Kakashi's bleeding eye, and Peter's shell-shocked expression, and knew. You found it, Naruto said. Kakashi nodded, slumping into a kitchen chair. Lois wordlessly handed him a wet cloth. We found it. It's a gate. A factory for gates. Kisame Hoshigaki is running it. Obito is turning our worlds into subsidiaries. He's not conquering with pain. He's merging with paperwork and pachinko parlors. He looked at Naruto, the full weight of the discovery in his eyes. It's worse than we thought. He's not just here. He's building an interdimensional conglomerate. And the hidden leaf is his first acquisition target. Naruto didn't rage. He didn't shout. He walked to the window, looking out at the quiet, sleeping street of Spooner Street, a street that represented everything Obito saw as the future, safe, silly, and soulless. He turned back to his war council, the exhausted ninja, the terrified family man, the brilliant, immoral baby, the hungover dog, the worried mother, the ignored children. Then we don't just shut down his factory, Naruto Uzumaki said, his voice quiet but filling the room. We give his board of directors a hostile takeover they'll never forget. Chapter 7, The Hostage Theory. The after-action report from the factory mission was a cocktail of hard data and existential dread. Stewie's scans, Kakashi's observations, and Peter's traumatized mutterings about shark-men and spud-eating swords painted a clear, horrifying picture. Obito's operation was not an invasion force, it was a startup. A cold, efficient, multidimensional logistics company specializing in reality dilution. The gate was tuned to multiple frequencies, Stewie explained, his hologram now displaying a complex, branching diagram. Think of it as a cable package. Channel 1, the elemental nations, specifically the Hidden Leaf. Channel 2, the land of waves, but contaminated with a discount store's reality signature. Channel 3, an unknown location, possibly one of the other hidden villages. He's not opening a door, he's building a network. Kakashi, his eye bandaged and chakra levels critically low, leaned forward. And Kisame's role? Foreman. Quality control. He was complaining about cultural contamination. Obito wants a clean merger, not a messy collision. He wants to replace our world's operating system with this one's, seamlessly. A silent, corporate takeover of reality. Lois set a cup of tea in front of Kakashi. Her hands were steady, but her face was pale. And what happens to us? To Quahog, if he succeeds? Stewie zoomed the hologram out, showing two spheres, one labeled Narutoverse, high drama, high consequence, and the other, Quahogverse, low stakes, high absurdity. A thick, pulsing arrow pointed from Quahog to the other world. We become the template. The default setting. Our flavor of meaningless would be imposed everywhere. But in the process, the feedback loops, the energy required. Quahog would likely be drained, destabilized. We're the battery and the blueprint. Once the new world is built, the blueprint is filed away, and the battery is discarded. The room digested this. Peter, uncharacteristically quiet, stared at his hands. So he's gonna use our towns, whatever, to turn your whole world into a crappy remake of our lives? And then throw us away like the instructions? Essentially, Stewie said. Brian let out a low whistle. Poetic. The ultimate joke, the satire consumes the epic, and then dies of irony poisoning. Naruto had been silent through the briefing, his arms crossed, a deep furrow between his brows. He was looking not at the hologram, but at the people in the room. At Chris, who was nervously twisting the hem of his shirt. At Meg, who had tucked herself into the corner of the sofa, looking smaller than ever. At Lois's quiet strength and Peter's uncharacteristic fear. At Stewie's clinical horror and Brian's grim acceptance. At Kakashi's exhausted resolve. These were not shinobi. They were not prepared for this. But they were his, now. His to protect. Just as the Hidden Leaf was. We can't attack the factory head-on, Naruto stated, breaking his silence. His voice was flat, pragmatic. Kakashi-sensei is out of commission. I'm maybe at 50%. They have a fully powered S-rank missing Nin, an army of technician Zetsu, and a fortified position. A direct assault is suicide. Then what's the plan, boss? Peter asked, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Do we, sue them? For dimensional copyright infringement? A slow, dangerous smile spread across Naruto's face. It wasn't his usual bright, encouraging grin. This was the smile of a predator who just spotted a fatal flaw in the armor. No. We don't fight their strength. We attack their bottom line. Everyone stared at him. Stewie, Naruto continued, turning to the baby. You said the gate needs to be tuned. It needs a clean signal from our world to lock onto, right? To avoid cultural contamination? Correct. The anchor point on their side has to be a place of strong, pure chakra resonance, a ley line, a sacred site, a place of great emotional or historical significance. And they're using one of the tailed beast sealing sites for the leaf gate, Kakashi added, catching on. A place saturated with immense, focused chakra. Naruto nodded. So if we can't destroy the receiver here, we mess with the transmitter there. We contaminate their signal. How? Lois asked. You're here. We're here. Naruto's smile didn't waver. We have an expert in contamination already on the payroll. He looked directly at Peter Griffin. Peter blinked. Me? Not just you, Naruto said. All of you. The pure, undiluted essence of Quahog. We need to send a message back through the pipe. Not an army. A vibe. A concentrated burst of everything that makes this place this place. We need to introduce a virus into Obito's clean system. A virus of pointless cutaways, non-sequiturs, emotional whiplash, and deeply unserious humor. A spark ignited in Stewie's eyes. It was the gleam of sublime, terrible inspiration. A mimetic weapon. A cognitive plague. We encode the fundamental axioms of Quahog's reality into a chakra pulse and inject it directly into their anchor point. It would be like introducing a computer virus that changes all the ones to zeros and then makes a fart noise. But how do we send it? Brian asked. We don't have a gate. We have a bleed point, Kakashi said, understanding dawning. The giggling gorge. It's a passive receiver, but with enough power focused into it, we could theoretically shout back down the line. Create a feedback surge directed at their anchor. It would take an immense amount of chakra, Stewie calculated. More than you or Kakashi have. More than you could generate, even at full strength, in this energy-starved environment. Naruto's gaze turned inward for a moment, a silent conversation passing behind his eyes. Then he looked back at them, his expression resolute. We have a source. One they don't know about. One that's already here, saturated with pain and confusion and power. The color drained from Kakashi's face. Naruto. No. He's uncontrollable. He's a broken god in a world that broke him further. He's a battery of pure, untapped chakra, Naruto countered. And he's hurting. He's looking for a purpose. Obito gave him a bad one. We can offer him a better one. You want to recruit pain? Brian exclaimed. The lemonade terrorist? He's not a terrorist here, Naruto said. He's a lost tourist with a superweapon. I reached him once. I can reach him again. But this time, I'm not asking him to stop. I'm asking him to help. To use his pain to protect something. To give it meaning. The audacity of the plan was breathtaking. It was so stupid, so reckless, so perfectly Naruto that it circled back around to seeming plausible. And what's the payload? Stewie asked, his fingers already itching to design it. What is the Quahog vibe we're sending? Naruto looked around the table, at his strange, chosen family. We need to show them what they're trying to import. Not the abstract idea. The real thing. We need to send a memory. An experience. The most fundamentally, irreducibly Quahog thing we can think of. Ideas were tossed out and shot down. A recording of Peter's fights with the chicken? Too violent, not absurd enough. A clip of Mayor West's speeches? Too politically bland. A montage of Brian's failed novels? Too niche. It was Meg, speaking so softly they almost didn't hear her, who offered the solution. A family dinner, she whispered. They all turned to look at her. She shrunk back, then seemed to find a thread of steel. I mean, a Griffin family dinner. Before they came. She nodded to Naruto and Kakashi. The whole thing. Dad telling a long, pointless story that goes nowhere. Mom trying to keep order. Stewie plotting. Brian being condescending. Chris being. Chris. Me being ignored. The talking over each other. The sudden, weird tangents. The love that's there but never said, just, buried under all the noise. Her voice grew stronger. That's Quahog. That's us. It's messy and stupid and nothing ever really gets solved, but, it's ours. It's real. A profound silence followed her words. Lois's eyes glistened. Peter looked at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. It's perfect, Stewie declared, breaking the moment. A dense packet of mundane chaos. The antithesis of a grand, shinobi narrative. It's the ultimate contaminant. The plan was set, a house of cards built on a foundation of insanity. Part 1, Find and Persuade Pain. Part 2, Stewie encodes the Griffin family dinner mimetic virus. Part 3, use Pain's chakra, focus through the gorge, to blast the virus back through the dimensional bleed towards the hidden leaf's anchor point. It was Naruto who volunteered for Part 1. Alone. He responded to me before, he told a protesting Kakashi. He sees me as something real in the fake. If I bring anyone else, especially you, it becomes a confrontation. This has to be a conversation. Kakashi, too weak to stop him, could only watch him go with a grim nod. Don't try to save him, Naruto. Just get him to listen. Naruto found Pain not in a library or a civic building, but at the Quahog minigolf and go-kart track. It was closed for the season. The wind rustled through the plastic windmills and frayed pirate sails. Pain was standing on the 10th hole, the windmill of despair, staring at the slowly rotating blades. He had discarded his Akatsuki cloak and wore a simple, dark tunic. With his back turned, the cracks on his neck and the strange, slumped set of his shoulders made him look less like a god and more like a tired, confused old man. The symbolism is relentless, Pain said, not turning. His layered voice was quieter now, stripped of its divine echo. A pointless challenge. A contrived obstacle. An endless, circular motion leading to a hole in the ground. One pays for the privilege. It's supposed to be fun, Naruto said, walking up beside him, keeping his distance. Fun. Pain tasted the word. A fleeting neurological reaction to novelty. Another layer of insulation against truth. He finally looked at Naruto. The single, cracked Rinnegan was bloodshot. The other eye was still clenched shut. You return. With more words. I have analyzed your last intervention. It was efficient. It lacked commentary. I found that interesting. I'm not here to comment, Naruto said. I'm here to ask for your help. Pain's expression didn't change, but the air around the windmill seemed to grow still. Help. The man who sent you here. Obito. He's not trying to understand this place. He's trying to use it as a weapon. To turn my home into this. Naruto gestured at the minigolf course. A silly, meaningless game where the score doesn't matter and the pain is just part of the theming. He wants to erase the very concept of real consequence. Of real pain. Of real growth. And you wish to stop him. It wasn't a question. I do. But I can't do it alone. The power here is thin. But you're a well. A deep, churning ocean of it. You feel it, don't you? The pressure? The pain that has nowhere to go, so it just sits and festers. For the first time, a flicker of raw emotion crossed Pain's distorted face. Agony. It is a tinnitus of the soul. A constant, screaming silence where my purpose used to be. Then give it a purpose, Naruto urged, stepping closer. His voice was low, intense. Don't let Obito use your pain as a tool to erase pain everywhere. Help me use it to protect something. Not to teach a lesson. Not to make a point. Just to protect. That's a purpose even this world can't twist. Protecting your family is never a joke. Pain looked away, towards the garish, giant clown head that marked the 18th hole. Family. A biological and social accident. Another fragile construct. Yeah. It is. And it's the only one we've got. Naruto thought of the Griffins, of Irika, of Team 7, of the whole, messy, glorious village. Help me protect my accidental family from the guy who wants to turn them into a corporate training video. Help me send a message he'll never forget. Pain was silent for a long time. The windmill creaked. In the distance, a car backfired, sounding like a feeble punchline. What, Pain finally asked, his voice stripped bare, is the message? Naruto told him. A strange sound escaped Pain's lips. It wasn't a laugh. It wasn't a sob. It was the sound of a dam cracking under a new, unexpected pressure. It was the sound of profound, cosmic irony finally achieving a kind of grace. You wish to weaponize a family dinner. The most powerful weapon we have, Naruto said, a genuine, desperate smile breaking through. Will you help us? Pain turned his single, pained, all-seeing eye fully on Naruto. He saw no deception. No grand scheme. Only a staggering, foolish, beautiful sincerity. The same sincerity that had once broken him in another life, in another world. In this world of jokes, it was the most serious thing he had encountered. He closed his eye, the cracked one. When he opened it, there was a decision there. Very well, Naruto Uzumaki, Pain said, and the weight of the world was in his voice, but also the faint, ghost of something else, the relief of a burden shared. Let us send a message about the meatloaf. Chapter 8, A Memory, Forged in Chaos. The Griffin dining room had never felt so much like a stage. The normal clutter, the mail pile, Chris's gym socks, Peter's unfinished model of the Millennium Falcon, had been shoved to the periphery. The table was set with Lois's good plates, the ones with the tiny, unchipped flowers. A meatloaf, its ketchup glaze gleaming under the overhead light, sat in the center like a sacrificial offering. I still don't understand why we have to recreate a Tuesday, Peter grumbled, adjusting the lapel of a suit jacket that strained across his stomach. Couldn't we just send them a highlight reel? Like the time I rode the grocery store conveyor belt? The power is in the unedited mundanity, you troglodyte, Stewie snapped. He was perched on a booster seat, wired into a complex console he'd built into the centerpiece, a bouquet of fiber-optic cables and crystalline sensors that pulsed in time with his scanner. We need a raw, uncut data stream of Griffin existential dynamics. The pauses, the non-sequiturs, the profound lack of narrative resolution. It must be authentic. It feels weird, Meg whispered, sitting stiffly in her chair, wearing a sweater Lois had picked out. Like we're being watched. We are being watched, but by hypothetical interdimensional corporate raiders, not a studio audience, Brian said, pouring himself a generous glass of wine. Though the effect is similar. Performance anxiety is to be expected. Lois took a deep, steadying breath, her hand on the back of her chair. All right, everyone. Just act natural. Be yourselves. But which self? Chris asked, genuinely confused. The me that likes model trains, or the me that's afraid of the furnace? The you that puts too much gravy on everything, Lois said, forcing a smile. Now, let's begin. Kakashi, bandaged and pale, observed from the kitchen doorway, his Sharingan recording not the scene, but the intricate chakra flows Stewie's device was beginning to generate. Naruto stood by the back door, a silent sentinel. His eyes kept flicking to the window, watching for the return of their volatile, newfound ally. The dinner began. It was stilted at first, a self-conscious pantomime. So, how was everyone's day? Lois asked, her voice a tad too bright.